Well, good morning once again, my friends. Pastor Chad here, once again bringing you the story, the narrative of Acts story, and the story of the church, the birth of it, and the birth of the disciples as they're leading this gospel message into so many different areas. And right now we're continuing to follow Paul and his story and what's been going on. And he's once again finding himself in this trial in a time where he's in prison, struggling, but yet continuing to use his platform for unfolding the good news to people. And it's not always going over well, especially those Jews who just do not want him around anymore and want it best for him to die and get rid of him. And he continues to get brought to courts, and they cannot find over and over in these Roman officials the things that he is doing that deserves death or deserves the punishment that people are asking for. But he continues to appeal to a higher court. And so there's nothing that this King Agrippa can do right now. He can't release him because he's appealed to the higher court, and partially he knows that people are ready to get him anyways. And Mike kind of alluded to that. Pastor Mike alluded to that yesterday. So we're going to pick up in chapter 25 and verse 23 through 27 and read through real quick what's going on in this story. Where's Paul at? What is he walking through now? And then a few quick just things I want to share about our own lives and how we can take what Paul's been going through and how he's been dealing with it, and how we can begin to learn from that for our own walks and our own journeys with Christ. It says this in verse 23, "The next day, Agrippa and Bernice came with great pomp and had entered the audience room with high-ranking officers and leading men of the city. At the command of the Festus, Paul was brought in. Festus says, 'King Agrippa and all who present with us, you see this man. The whole Jewish community has petitioned me about him in Jerusalem and here in Caesarea, shouting that he ought not to live any longer.'" Again, they just want this to be over and Paul to be done with. And we're going to learn his story tomorrow, so hold on to that. "I found he had done nothing deserving of death, but because he has made appeal to the emperor, I decided to send him to Rome. There's nothing he can do. It's kind of out of his hands now because he's a Roman citizen and he claimed, 'I want to have a higher court. But I have nothing definite to write about him to his majesty. Therefore, I have brought him before you all, and especially before you, King Agrippa, so that as a result you can investigate. I may have something to write. For this, I think, is unreasonable to send a prisoner without specifying the charges against him.'" Now, lo and behold, he knows there's charges. He knows there's issues about him. But for the law, he's trying to examine him. He's trying to basically look at his life and examine his life and see, is there anything worthy of this petition of death or to be imprisoned any longer? And Paul continues to not stop his platform of speaking about the name of Jesus, even though the people don't like what he's stating. They're in debate. Is this against the law? Is this against what he's supposed to be doing? I want to pause real quick and just change the narrative to you and to me. And wondering, I've heard this sermon before stated of if your life was under judgment, if your life was under this microscope, as Paul's is going to be, and saying, "Give me something to justify what you're calling me to do to this man," and you were to be the one that was going to be examined, what would they find in your life? I was thinking about as I thought myself, as if I was examined, how would I testify? How would people find out if I'm a believer, I'm a follower of Christ, if I am doing the things that I'm supposed to be doing? And the fruits of the spirits came to my mind out of that the great epistle of Paul of joy and peace and patience and kindness and self-control and these different fruits. Would I be examined, and could people see there was fruit in my life? Could people see, if they examined me, how I've been treating people recently, how my Facebook posts have been stated? If I was to be judged and looked at as Paul is, have I used my platform for good? Have I used my platform to share the name of Jesus and the story of Jesus to people? Or have I used my platform, whether it be with my neighbor or on social media or just talking in front of people, or for me as a pastor at times, my platform of the stage of speaking sermons or video things, have I used my platform to further a kingdom message of love, grace, mercy, kindness? Have I been self-controlled? Have I had this forbearance? Have I had this grace and love and care for others? Has that been in the forefront of my life? And especially the last 4, 5, 6 months when it's been just chaos. If I was examined as Paul is getting examined and saying, he's basically saying, give me something so I can write to the Caesar. Give me something so I can write so when I send him, they'll read this note and say, oh, this is why he's being convicted. I had to think my own life. If you were examining me, if someone else, my wife, my kids, would they find enough to convict me of being a follower of Christ? Or would they find enough to saying, he's just a good person, let him go? Paul is saying, no matter what I'm going to do, I'm going to preach the good news in the name of Jesus Christ. I'm not going to stop. I'm not sure where you're at, but today examine yourself. It talks about that when we take communion. Pastor Mike alluded to yesterday that we got this Sunday morning, last Sunday, to take communion together. A part of taking communion is doing this. It says to stop and examine my life. And maybe sometimes as Paul is getting examined or he's getting basically kind of picked apart, maybe at times we need to examine our own hearts and our lives. Before I post something, before I state something to my friend, before I put out my political party agenda, before I say anything, am I leading with the love of Christ? Am I leading with kingdom message? And I want to challenge you today. Sometimes it's good just to sit in solitude and examine ourselves. And as I do that today, then take some time, some space, sacred space, stop and let God feed you, to talk to you, examine your heart. Are you using your platform, as Paul does, to express the name of Christ to your neighbor? That is our call as a Christian, my friends. It is not necessarily to always find everything correct that I want correct, but am I leading with the love and the kingdom message first? God bless you today.